Here's my audience. My name is Creighton Colburn, and today is Thursday, the 16th. I'm sure everyone has heard of at least one story on the news about a child having access to a gun and accidentally killing someone from it. Everyone has heard about people being shot or dying because of some type of firearm. Maybe if police would just lock them up, we could prevent many of these incidents from happening. The making of more laws could help prevent easy access to firearms and reduce gun-related accidents. Today, I will be talking about how it should be important for people to pass a mental health test, pass a background check to see if they have any criminal records, and how people should be required to have a safe to put the guns in so little kids do not have access to them. The first thing I want to talk about today is how people should have to pass a mental health test to purchase a gun to prove they are mentally stable. Passing a mental health test in order to purchase a gun could solve a lot of problems. If there is a mental health test, people that are mentally unstable will be allowed to purchase a gun, which could prevent and decrease the number of accidents and violence. Mass shootings would be less likely to happen because the shooters typically have mental health issues. According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, approximately 10% of children and adolescents suffer from mental illness, yet only 20% of the group have been diagnosed and are receiving services. Looking at adults, approximately 1 in 17 live with a serious mental disorder, such as schizophrenia, major depression, or bipolar disorder, yet less than 1/3 receive mental health services. This shows that a few Americans suffering from a serious mental illness ever come into contact with the system or receive treatment for their conditions. CNN commentator and legal analyst Mel Robbins talks about the case of the mass shooting incident in Isla Vista, California. Police say Elliot Rodger went on a killing spree near the University of California campus in Santa Barbara, shooting and stabbing victims, killing 6 and wounding 13 before he killed himself. He had legally purchased 3 guns, passed the federal background check, and met several other requirements in one of the most liberal states with the toughest gun control laws in the country. California was one of 8 states with the toughest gun control laws in the country. Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, in which a lone gunman killed 20 children and 6 adults. California's gun control laws received an A- grade from both the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence and the Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence. The Los Angeles Times reported. How did Rodger succeed in his lethal plan? It wasn't the gun laws, it was the lack of common sense, mental commitment laws. This story comes from CNN.com. CNN.com also made a statement that we need to adopt a nationwide standard for involuntary civil commitment, and that standard should be need for treatment. If a family member, law enforcement officer, or mental health professional is concerned about the well-being of an individual, they should be able to have the individual held for a mental health evaluation. And finally, the police need tools as well. They need training and the discretion to ask about and remove guns from any household where there is domestic dispute. A call for a well-being check or a person who exhibits violent or unstable behavior. They also need a mental health professional on call for such checks. In some cases, medications and therapies should not be optional. New Jersey has a law that state police can deny the issue of handgun permits and firearms purchaser identification card when they feel it would not be in the interest of public health, safety, or welfare. California also has some laws for mentally ill people, such as if an individual has been voluntarily admitted to a psychiatric facility and are receiving inpatient treatment for a mental illness, and the attending mental health professional states and that the individual is a danger to self or others, or have communicated to a licensed psychotherapist a serious threat of physical violence against a reasonably identifiable victim or victims, for example. More states need to create laws like the ones California and New Jersey have to make mental records history be a part of the check in order to purchase a firearm. The next thing I'd like to talk about is people should have a background check on them to see if they have any criminal records. There should be a background check on the person attempting to purchase a firearm to see if they have committed a crime that should prevent them from purchasing a firearm. There are federally required background checks on purchasing weapons. Many states limit gun purchases to one a month, and juveniles may not buy them all. But even if there were tougher limits, access to guns would remain relatively easy, because many would be stolen or sold illegally, and those that cannot purchase the new gun themselves will either steal or borrow them. JustFacts.com says that under federal law, it is illegal and punishable by up to 10 years in prison for someone convicted of or under indictment for a felony, punishable by more than 1 year in prison. Someone convicted of a misdemeanor, punishable by more than 2 years in prison, a fugitive from justice, an unlawful user of any controlled substance, someone who has been ruled as mentally defective or has been committed to any mental institution, an illegal alien, someone dishonorably discharged from the military, someone who has renounced his or her U.S. citizenship, someone subject to certain restraining orders, or someone convicted of a domestic violence misdemeanor to receive, possess, or transport any firearm or ammunition. However, this does not mean that all types of people mentioned in the sentence before do not have possession of a firearm. The Brady Law created a system of background checks, but it applies only to licensed dealers. If you're not a licensed dealer and want to sell a gun directly to somebody, then you don't need to run a background check. This is how criminals can get possession of guns, and then they take the risk of getting caught. When criminals get guns, they get them from friends, family, or from an underground market source. Without universal background check requirements, there is little restrictions to selling guns to criminals or gun traffickers. Criminals will not be allowed to purchase guns if there is a universal background check, which would decrease the number of murders and all other violence. The final thing I'd like to discuss today is being required to have a safe to put the guns in so little kids do not have access to them. It should be required that if you own a firearm, you also have to own a safe to put those firearms in. There are no child access provision laws in the federal level, and federal laws do not generally require gun owners to safely store their guns. The Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence says that approximately 1 or 3 handguns is kept loaded and unlocked, and most children know where their parents keep their guns. Lots of gun owners lock their guns in safes or have other ways to secure their firearms, practices that can be increased by laws and educational campaigns. Gun safes are the most secure gun storage option available to the average gun owner. If the guns are locked in a safe, children in that specific household are not able to have access to the guns, which makes it safer and less likely to have an accident inside or even outside the home with the firearm. The U.S. General Accounting Office has estimated that 31% of accidental deaths caused by firearms might be prevented by the addition of 2 devices, a childproof safety lock and a loading indicator, a safety device that indicates whether a firearm is loaded and a round remains in the chamber. I stated earlier in my speech, a lot of people that are not able to purchase firearms themselves tend to steal or borrow guns to have access to one. If it were required to lock the guns inside the safe, the number of stolen guns would decrease. And if there was a robbery or in somebody's house, the robber would not be able to get the gun out of the safe, making it nearly impossible to steal the gun. Rather, if they had the gun in their room, somewhere it would be a lot easier access. The safe storage of guns will help prevent not just unintentional accidents, but intentional accidents as well. And I'm going to show y'all how to properly store a gun in a safe. Alright, this is a Benelli Super Black Eagle, and you always want to make sure before you put it in the safe that it is unloaded. Well, the first thing you want to do is check the safety. The safety on most models are right behind the trigger, and if you see red, that means dead, which means safety is off. So you always want to push the pin so there's no red showing, which means safety is on. And then what you want to do is unload the gun. Once the gun's unloaded and there's no ammunition left in the gun, you want to close the chamber, and then you want to wipe it down with some oil or clean it with a cloth and put it in your safe. Alright, today I've talked about how passing a mental health test in order to purchase a firearm should be required. There should be a universal background check to see if the person attempting to purchase a gun has committed a crime, and how having a storage safe to put a gun in could prevent a lot of accidents from happening. Hopefully from my speech, you can take away something today and see how easy it is to have access to a firearm. This is how we Americans can stop the easy access to firearms and can help prevent violence with them. I hope you all understand how important gun control is to this country. Thank you. Here's my audience.